Hello everybody and welcome. This is Spoonie with another shipbuilding tutorial for Starbase. In this video we're going to go over batteries, pilot chairs, control plates, and levers. Everything we need to finally get this ship up and flying. So one of the final necessary components that we've left off of the ship in previous videos are the batteries. The batteries are going to store energy, which is important later on when we add mining lasers and other ship utilities, but is also a good idea because the generators do take some time to warm up, and if the fuel rod runs low, we'll be able to swap it out without having the rest of our ship turn off. So once again, we're going to go to our asset browser, type in battery. Currently the only variety available is the small, and we're going to place 2 of those on our ship. We'll auto bolt them down, and then we'll cable them up. Now since these batteries are in contact with one another, they do share a connection, and we'll only have to add cables to one of them. If you have multiple battery banks, you will have to cable each of the banks, but not each individual battery. I've finished adding the cables and pipes to the maneuvering thrusters that we hadn't yet connected, and now that we've got all the components necessary for flight, we're ready to add a pilot chair. At the front of our ship, we're going to add some beams to create a nice space for one. Don't forget to weld these on. And then we'll add our chair. Go to your asset browser, type in chair, and you'll notice there's a passenger chair stand, a pilot chair, and a pilot chair stand. The pilot chair stand differs from the passenger chair stand in that it has a port which can be cabled. This will allow us to power our pilot chair control table. The passenger chair does not have access to this. So we're going to select our pilot chair stand. Place it down. It should be facing this direction. We're going to bolt that into place. And then we're going to select our pilot chair. Place that down. And then add a pilot chair control table. Highlight all 3 and auto bolt them together. Now if we weren't planning on adding any buttons or indicators to our dash, we could just place the levers directly here on the control table. But since we may want indicators and buttons, we're going to add a separate control table. Go to your asset browser, type in table, select the control table stand, which will give us a port. We're going to place this down and bolt it down. Next, we'll select the control table. We'll just go with the largest. We're going to place this, and because it can be a little bit difficult to place it down, we're going to rotate it to a 45-degree angle, which will make it much easier to connect to the stand. We'll bolt that into place. And then we'll cable them together. Now that these are connected to power, anything we place on them will have access to power and won't need to be cabled individually. If we were not using these tables and we just decided to place levers, such as here, we would have to cable them individually. So next, let's add our levers. We're going to need 3 centering levers and then 1 regular. These will need to be bolted down. And then we'll add our regular. And I'll place this over here so that I can demonstrate the difference. Now because this one is not connected to the table, I will have to cable it individually. And finally, just like with our thrusters, we'll need to change some name values so the flight control unit and the flight computer understand which controls are which. So if you go to your flight control unit and click on it, you can see in the properties box that it has a few controls: FCU forward, FCU backwards, rotational pitch, rotational yaw, and rotational roll. We're going to use these as our controls. First, we'll select our regular lever, and this will act as our accelerator. Under the name value lever state, we're going to change that to FCU forward. For this lever, we're also going to want to change the lever centering speed. By default, it's set to 0, which means whatever value we set this to when we accelerate, it will just stay there. We want it to go back to 0 unless we turn on cruise, so we'll change this to 10. For our other three levers, we'll want to change the lever state names to FCU, rotational, yaw. And to make the other two easier on myself, I'm going to copy and paste this value into the lever state name value field. Only I'll change yaw to pitch. And then for the last one, I'll change it to roll. The lever minimum and maximum output that appear on the centering levers control the sensitivity of the lever that we're using. If we find that one of our controls is too sensitive, we can reduce these values to reduce the sensitivity. And remember, if you ever forget what to name your levers, you can always click on your flight control unit and copy and paste directly from here. Now that everything is named appropriately, we can test. Enter test mode by pressing F5, and let's see if it flies. Pitch works. Yaw works, but it's very slow. We'll address that in a moment. The roll works, and we can accelerate. Now with every ship, a lot of what you'll end up doing is troubleshooting. And with this ship, like we could see, the yaw was a little slower than we'd like it to be, significantly slower than the pitch or the roll. So to fix that, we will end up adding some additional maneuvering thrusters to the back end of our ship. While these thrusters will help us with our yaw, it doesn't seem that they're enough for this particular ship. To do this, we're just going to copy and paste. And we can actually do all four to make this really quick. Auto bolt them into place, and we'll cable and pipe them up. Check our durability. It looks like we do need to add a few bolts. I think that should do it. Warp class is over 1, so we know there's no more durability issues. Something you always want to do when you're adding additional thrusters is to check the name values, especially if you've saved and loaded a project. A bug that sometimes shows up, although not very often, is that the name values will end up being the same as previously placed engines, even though we do have the automatic thruster field name tool set. In this case, that's exactly what happened. As you can see, this thruster power level is the same as this thruster. That will confuse the flight control unit, and whenever this thruster fires, so will this one. If you have fewer than 50 thrusters, this is as simple as clicking on this thruster field name tool, resetting all device field names, and then switching back from manual to automatic. This will reset the name values for all of your thrusters, and you'll be good to go. If you have more than 50 thrusters, this can be a little bit more of a headache, as you'll have to go through and figure out which thrusters were misnamed. So save yourself some time, and whenever you're placing new thrusters, especially on a project that you've saved and loaded, just double check that they're being named correctly. Now let's see if that fixed our dull yaw. Enter test mode, and that's much better. Now our pitch is still far too sensitive, so let's reduce that. Go to your levers, and we'll reduce this max output and minimum output to 50. We'll do the same for all three. That should cut the sensitivity in half. And you can adjust these to whatever you feel comfortable with. Now let's see if it flies. And it does. So we've got everything we need for a functioning ship. In the next video, we'll go over how to set up buttons, indicators, and some basic YOLO to get our ship functioning exactly how we want it.